Right, so this is the OnePlus 10 Pro, and it launched in China back in around January time and received some pretty questionable early feedback. Build quality, software, camera have all come under fire in the early impressions, but are the claims from OnePlus and certain areas of the media justified? And are OnePlus the company they once were? I think you need to hear this. So I've been using the OnePlus 10 Pro for about a week or so now, ever since I unboxed it. I have the reviewers unit here, which includes this lovely ocean picture. Maybe I'll do my next OnePlus unboxing on that beach. You never know. We also have some OnePlus cases here, including this kind of tear-down looking one, and a sandstone finish one as well. But this is the retail box that you would be getting. Phone, manuals, and a soft, flexy, matte black case, charger, and charging cable. Now this is 80-watt SuperVooc charge, charging your 5000 mAh battery from 0 to 50% in just around 10 minutes, which is absolutely incredible. But I know what you're thinking, isn't SuperVooc OPPO? Don't OnePlus use Warp or Dash Charge from old? And you would be correct in saying that. But it's not straight rip-off, there is a nuance to it. Cutting a long story short, OnePlus and OPPO merged product teams some months back, so there are definitely some things that are the same, but it isn't quite as black and white as some outlets are making out. Firstly, OnePlus and OPPO, alongside Vivo and Realme, have been under the BBK Electronics umbrella for a long time, and as a result, they have shared many design and product features over the years. So the OnePlus One was basically the OPPO Find 7A, OnePlus 5 was basically the OPPO R11, and OnePlus's Dash and subsequent Warp Charge was basically a kind of rebrand of VOOC, SuperVooc charging. OPPO phones were angled more towards a Chinese market and OnePlus phones more towards a Western or global one. But a lot of the core elements were pretty much, if not the same. So the main differences came down to a software level. OPPO handsets like this Find X5 Pro here run on ColorOS, whereas OnePlus, like the OnePlus 10 Pro here, runs on OxygenOS. OxygenOS in this case 12. So I personally was a massive fan of the early days of OxygenOS, when you had that kind of almost stock experience, but things did start to alter a little bit, and around OxygenOS 11 and certainly with OxygenOS 12, there's definitely a shift more towards ColorOS. That's kind of now the base layer compared to where Google's stock Android would have been the base layer before. That's not to say I don't like ColorOS, I just like the fact that they were different. I'm not sure it's such a great move fusing the two softwares so that they kind of run very, very similar. It again doesn't give a great differentiation between the two handsets. On top of that, OPPO's global appeal is actually higher now than it was even maybe 2 or 3 years ago, with the likes of the Find X3 and X5 Pros being received really well. So on one hand, I do kind of agree with the early questioning of this move, but one thing that isn't as originally reported is the fact that OxygenOS is dead, it's gone, it's going. Because according to OnePlus CEO Pete Lau, the feedback they received on the software front, the backlash from the enthusiast fan was pretty heavy, made the company push forward with a guarantee of a future OxygenOS update. Quite where we go after that is unclear, but I think 13 could be key. If we see a slight backtrack, almost to see something moving away from ColorOS again, then I think OnePlus phones will still have a very prominent role in the smartphone market. But if we see further parallels to ColorOS, the OnePlus identity could become somewhat washed, and their phones may possibly not stand out where they once did. Now, an example of this can be seen in the camera. The app is almost identical to the OPPO Find X5 Pro. The fact that both OPPO and OnePlus are both working with the famous camera manufacturer Hsselblad almost, in my opinion, dulls down the significance, as it's not necessarily now unique. Same orange button, same shutter sound, and same colour science in Pro mode. And although I love such features such as the X-Pan mode, resembling the old school unique aspect ratio from Hsselblad cameras, I've been using that feature on the OPPO Find X5 Pro, so again, it doesn't feel quite as unique now. But what about the actual hardware lenses here. Oh, and if you're enjoying this video so far, a sub would be amazing. Well, we have the same 48 megapixel primary sensor and 8 megapixel telephoto as on the OnePlus 9 Pro, and the only big change here is the 50 megapixel ultra wide, which can now shoot a 150-degree angle, and therefore modes such as fisheye, for example, are possible. And while again I feel like I've seen this somewhere before, it does give you great customization options, and the overall photo quality on the whole is really good. Sometimes with portrait shots, the edges misfire slightly, so shots can look a little bit messy, but I have heard that some people say that the shutter speed is really slow and causes problems with moving subjects. This isn't something that I've necessarily found. It is often a pet peeve of mine that when I'm taking pictures of my pets, pets, it's good. I've often found that outside of the Google Pixel line, which is notoriously amazing for this and something I wish was on every other manufacturer's flagship smartphones, I wouldn't say this is necessarily any worse than the Galaxy S22 Ultra, for example, the iPhone 13 Pro Max, Oppo Find X5 Pro. So I don't really get the negativity again on this front. I've actually found it on the whole to be fairly snappy. The OnePlus 10 Pro offers 10-bit photography, which is 64 times as many colours, and you can shoot in RAW in the Hsselblad Pro mode, and it's Hsselblad certified. You have 3 Hsselblad master filters, which are really cool to play around with, but as far as we can see, the overall involvement from the camera manufacturer is solely from a software base. Something I would love to see them integrate over there. I think they've got a 3-year deal. One of these two has got a 3-year deal. The other one might be a year out of that. I'd love to see more of a hardware influence as well. That would be great on a future product. But right now it's more superficial. We do have a movie mode, which is a manual recording mode, and you can shoot video at a max of 4K at 120 frames per second. Insanely good for your slow-mo. If you wanted to slow footage down in post, for your epic cinematic slow-mo scenes, those added frames just give you a really nice smooth motion. And an actual film mode for that super widescreen look. So lots of that, I'm sure you'll agree, sounds great. But one area of this phone that has received some pretty bad publicity, and something that I don't entirely agree with again, is build quality. There have been some outlets that have slammed this phone when it comes to durability, with bending, cracking, breaking, etc. Similar to the iPhone 6 and Bendgate. And again, I often scratch my head with these things. Yes, in an ideal world, I would love nothing more than be able to place a phone on a desk and smash it with a hammer and it not break. But I'm a realist, and I appreciate that if I take a piece of tech and try and bend something that's not meant to bend at its weakest point, it might just break. If it survives certain drops and scratches, for example, then great. But it's not a tank, and it's not really designed to be one. Now, it is only Gorilla Glass 5 on the back. It's not the best, but it is still fairly okay. Flagship level 2 years ago-ish. But we do have the very latest Gorilla Glass Victus on the front, matching the best from Xiaomi, Samsung, etc. And we have a haptic motor inside here, which is 40% stronger than the previous model, and it feels it as well. So it certainly feels pretty premium, something that has been the case over the last couple of years, especially also when it comes to the actual display panel. 6.7-inch, 120Hz Quad HD Plus LTPO 2.0 AMOLED panel. And the LTPO means that it can change its refresh rate, adapt it depending on what you're doing from high to low, so it can save some of that battery when you are doing something that doesn't need a high refresh rate. So it is a good technology. Again, a lot of flagships have it, but it is nice to see it here as well. 1300 nits peak brightness, and the auto brightness learns your habits, which is a great feature. Often when I sit there and play with my phone, when I'm on my phone, I often find that whatever lighting I'm in, the auto brightness is good, but it's not quite optimal, and I have to kind of toggle it a little bit all the time. This learns that behavior, and when you're then in that sort of setting again, it already knows what your preferences are, and it will learn over time more and more. really handy feature, and I have noticed it working. I find myself toggling it less and less, which is great. Great little feature, lovely stuff. The fingerprint scanner is higher than the 9 series, in a much better position, I might add, and the color calibrations have also been done at 100 and 500 nits to further improve the color accuracy. Now we know that OnePlus phones have been top tier for performance and gaming over the last few years, and again, the 10 Pro is no different. Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, and either 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM depending on the version you get. This is combined with a cooling system that apparently sits above and below the main powering internals, and you also have a Hyper Boost gaming engine taken from OPPO and a frame rate stabilizer. This phone is the real deal here. Oh, and apparently, weird fact, if you laid out all of the cooling components in the 10 Pro out on a table, it would be the size of an A5 sheet of paper flat. Take of that what you will. Now I have noticed 2 possible performance problems. Kind of feels more software than anything, but to be noted. The first is using the lock screen, which sometimes, excuse the pun, locks up and doesn't function properly without a reset. The fingerprint scanner icon no longer appears, and the Face ID just seems to not want to function. It's only happened twice, but it's happened nevertheless. Again, it feels more like a software bug. Probably won't be there on the retail units, but I have to pass on what I've experienced. And the other one is on the YouTube app. And again, I don't know whether this is widespread YouTube or not, or whether it's just on this phone. But I have noticed I've been viewing content and I've come out of the app to go on another app, and then I've gone back in, and the sound is exactly the same. I've got the picture-in-picture working. I can hear the sound fine, but the picture is in slow motion. And again, I have to close the app down, reopen it, reload the video, and then that is no longer in slow-mo. Very weird, never experienced anything like that before. But again, might be a bug with the phone, might be a bug with YouTube, the app, don't know. One to monitor, again. So all things considered, I think, as always, OnePlus have delivered a pretty great all-round phone. One that also undercuts a lot of its rivals in this area, including, like I mentioned, the Find X5 Pro. For sure, OnePlus could have improved a few things here and there, but I certainly don't feel the negativity surrounding this phone early on is justified. On the flip side, this phone definitely feels like we're at a crossroads, and whichever path OnePlus chooses next could make or break them in the future. A mere consumer's feedback would be, don't be generic, make software a prime differential again, and try and maintain that aggressive pricing system. Lose even one of those, let alone 3, and OnePlus could be in trouble. I personally just don't get the rebranding of phones either. You see it happen a lot with other brands, Xiaomi, Redmi, Poco, as examples, very similar phones, if not the same in a lot of features, just rebranded to launch in different areas. I don't understand it at all. You could just have different software running on those phones, depending on where they're launched, with the same phone, same brand name, so that it's far less confusing for the end user. And a perfect example of that is OnePlus, when they shipped with Oxygen OS and Hydrogen OS in different regions. I say it all the time, it seems to fall on deaf ears at the moment. There's obviously a reason for it. If there are any brands that do this and are watching this video and would like to let me know, that would be absolutely wonderful. Either way, I've been Adam, this has been the OnePlus 10 Pro, and you, as always, have been beautiful. I might just keep that end line for every video. It's probably the most cheesy thing you will ever hear, and I like it. Check out more of my content here. Sub if you're new to the channel and love everything tech. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. As always, it helps. And follow me on my other social media for breaking tech news and just to continue the wonderful conversation.
Do just what you want.